Greetings and welcome to the Voices Less Said podcast show with Dr. PMAC, a show where I invite fantastic people that are doing great work. I call it ordinary people doing extraordinary work. Today, the person that I'm going to be speaking with is no less ordinary, very fantastic, extraordinary human being doing fantastic work within academia and within practice. Today, join me in my conversation as I speak with Dr. Shemine Gulamhusein. Shemine has worked in the fields of therapeutic recreation, pediatric palliative care, violence against women and children who witness abuse. She has worked as a counselor at international youth camps, has great experience in outdoor programming for people with disabilities, and has also worked as a private practitioner who is supporting children, youth, and families, as well as adults wanting to explore their inner child through somatic practices. Shemine has a deep-seated commitment to create innovative and interdisciplinary understandings, dismantling of and recreating accessible, culturally grounded and transformative research. Her primary research is grounded in therapeutic recreation, in movement, as well as migration studies. Shemine has an extensive list of publications, peer-reviewed publications, and I'm excited today to speak to her about her work and the things that make her keep going. Join me today on Voices Less Said with Dr. PMAC. One of the things that I find interesting about you specifically is just the layers of work that you do, right? And so as I was doing my research, I was looking at your journey has taken you through therapeutic recreation, palliative care, violence against women, somatic practices, and it left me wondering what are the threads that connects all of these?
I think that for me, the thread is people and community, right? And so everything is embedded in the body existing within community. And so, for example, therapeutic recreation, it was a space that I landed in because I was curious about how young people or people's bodies responded to the environments in which they belonged, and particularly within recreational spaces. And it was through that I landed in pediatric palliative care, where we were thinking about end of life and how do young bodies experience shortened lives and that precarity in that. So for me, it's always been people, the essence of humanity and the purity of it. And I think one thing I constantly am thinking about is that compassionate understanding of the pure essence of a person. And that the responses that we have, or I have, or others have, is often a reflection of an experience.
Makes sense. So maybe some of my listeners or many of my listeners will be like, oh, she said therapeutic recreation. What is that?
Great question. I mean, I wish I knew a full answer to it, but I think when I think about therapeutic recreation, what I think about that is using recreation, movement, physical activity in a way that helps us towards a well-being status that we desire, right? So if I can give a very basic example, it would be perhaps a young person who loses a limb to an accident, and how do we work with them in order to build up the strength in other ways, or build the tools necessary so that they can return to their activities of choice. On another lens, it's about thinking about, even from a mental health lens, where can we go out for a walk through a trail in order to help regulate ourselves. And is that contributing to the well-being of ourselves? And so it's using recreation as a tool to move towards better wellness or betterness.
That's great. And I've not come across where therapeutic recreation has been. I mean, it's through my research of the work that you're doing. I was like, oh, this is a thing, right? So why do you think it has, sort of been unrecognized as a way of, providing healing? And
I think it's called different things in different spaces.
Okay, fair enough.
So I started in recreation and leisure studies and went to therapeutic recreation because I particularly wanted to work with young people who had experienced or experiencing a disability. Right. So they might call them something else. I think it oftentimes recreational therapists are in geriatric facilities, right? Yeah, so those ones that are doing the activities, or they move into occupational therapy, so that I feel like it's often a stepping stone. But when I did my degree in 2004, I started, graduated in 2009. Waterloo was the only university in Canada that had a therapeutic recreation degree itself. You could do a rec and leisure degree and then a year of subsequent work in other places. And now you'll see it in various universities and colleges across the country. So I do think it's growing. I think it's less known, or it is, maybe it's a lack of articulating it in a way that's accessible. But I would say in child and youth care, it is oftentimes non-existent.
Okay. Good. And prior to starting our, formal sort of, recording, you and I were talking about just the experiences of migration, like, I was telling you my story and the things that I've had to do. And in your writing, you speak up, and even in your talks, you speak about beautifully complex sensations bodies experience. So can you help us understand what you mean by that?
I think what I mean by that is that our bodies respond in these micro ways that aren't always noticed. So for example, when we talk about a story, what's the twinkle in your eye representing? Or do your fingertips go cold all of a sudden because there's an emotion connected, right? Or like all of a sudden you start twitching. What is that actually telling us? And those are those beautifully complex ones where they can tell a story on their own, but you have to be so attuned either to yourself or the person you're in connection with in order to recognize it, right? So what happens when all of a sudden, for example, we're sitting in a meeting or a classroom together and somebody that doesn't normally pick up a pencil and twirl it starts doing that? What story?
Hold up. So now I'm like, okay, so all these times I've been sitting in meetings with you, you've been sussing out the room and the tables and seeing who's doing what, right?
Yeah.
Oh my word.
But there's something beautiful in that, because you can only read those if you have a relationship with the person. Right? Like,
that makes sense. Yeah.
You can, otherwise you're making huge assumptions.
Yeah.
And I think that's where somatic work becomes really problematic, is that when we assume that your head nod means the same thing as my head nod.
Okay. All right. No, I get it. I get it. Now, look, you have me thinking back in all the meetings together and all the kind of...
I was like, well, we always sit on the same side, so...
Okay. Word. And so some of the work that you have done as well, in particular, your primary research focuses on creating spaces for Muslim immigrants to unpack migration narratives through recreation. So would you care enough to share what does that space actually look like in practice, and what has surprised you most about what emerges when people are given that freedom?
So if I was to describe the space, it's oftentimes where we have a community room or, a shared space, and we'll start with a meal, always a meal.
I love it.
And we, over that meal, we engage in conversation, but we also have side activities. So what I call collaborative poetry. And what that looks like is that there is posters on the wall with prompts. So for example, when you think of the word recreation, what comes to mind? And there'll be sticky notes around the room. And on those sticky notes, we encourage you to respond through either a word, a phrase, or a sentence. And then we take everyone's responses and we don't change their words. We just order them in a poetic way.
Wow.
Right. And so during that process, then we have what I guess in an academic sense, data. Right. We have these stories. And then following that, we create art spaces. And so we have paints and collage materials and you name it, we'll try and bring it in. And they start to articulate their experiences through art forms and in conversation. So that's kind of how I've seen that work play out. And so what I mean by exploring it through recreation is that we're using recreational tools such as poetry and art to unpack lived experiences in recreational spaces, thinking about like things like swimming pools and arenas and all of that. So it's kind of a layering of recreation in and of itself. When you asked about what surprised me the most about my research, I would have to say is that I never got to the recreation.
Oh, really?
I don't feel like we made sense of the lived experiences in recreation because for many of the people, community members that came and the interlocutors, is that it was the first time they got to express their identity politics in a way of unpacking them.
Yeah.
And so we got stuck in that process.
Wow.
Right? We got stuck in what does it mean to come from a culture where, for example, you can't freely go swimming if you're a female. You have to think about all the things and the modesty and the folks that are around. Or I remember one person telling me this beautiful story of how she wanted to cycle, and her partner, her husband, had to create particular paths so that they wouldn't be cycling across police stations.
Oh.
Because she wasn't allowed as a female to be doing that activity in the clothing that she wanted. That is safe to do. And so all of those pieces were secondary to the unpacking of what does it mean to be an immigrant? What does it mean to live in multiple spaces at once? How do we, what do we call code switch? So that overtook some of that research, which has led me to a project that's coming up, hopefully, and more embedded in tracing what I call tracing joy. So this idea of how does recreation become moments of joy through hardship?
Oh, moments of joy through hardship. Okay.
And so in here, I really think about my dad's narratives and like,
shout out to Dad if you're listening.
Dad. But like this idea of like, even my mom, but my dad, like I vividly remember my dad being this advocate of, okay, school's not your thing. Let's go play an activity. Go move your body.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I remember taking my mom's bike. It was 3 times too big for me. And fine, I crashed it and they would come out, pick me up and move. But because that's how, so even during our moments of hardship, I was able to process through my body. Maybe that's the connecting point actually, is the processing through activity.
Wow.
Between all the work I do.
Okay. So, I want to connect this, particularly the experience around the somatic practices and what you call the inner child, right? So as you work with people, and again, some of the, research I was doing about you too, was that at some point you're doing private practice and you're working with people to explore their inner child through somatic practices. So for someone who's listening and is unfamiliar perhaps with this concept, what does meeting your inner child feel like, and what does it feel like in the body, and why is that work so significant for us as adults to do that?
I don't know that I could describe what it feels like, because I think it varies for each person. I think it depends on the stories that live in your body, right? And so for me, one of the things that I find with inner child work that's super fascinating is that there's memories that are often untouched. That are often actually moments of transformation or transitioning. So when we're able to tap back into those, then we're able to move ourselves forward in particular ways. And so when I say that, I say like, when I think about somatic and inner child, I say, okay, like, can we go back to a story of, I don't know, the moment that you felt the most safe. Okay. Tell me what your body felt like in that moment. Don't tell me the story necessarily. Tell me what your body experienced. So was there all of a sudden a warming of your core side, or all of a sudden did you start sweating? What was the somatic? And then when was there another time that you maybe felt that? And so can we start to name when that that young person existed at its core? And at its most pure.
So is it like, I'm thinking about a whole lot of things right now. And again, tell me, Patrick, oh, that's wrong. That's, I'm thinking about, are you finding ways to address adverse childhood experiences?
Potentially. I think it depends on what that person is seeking. Right. So if it's like, perhaps it's a developmental thing. So there could be like, when in my life did I experience a moment of trauma or adversity? And how has that helped me become who I am today? Or when was there a moment of pure joy? I use that word a lot. Or a moment of, wow, this is what I want for my future. So it's not always adverse, right? For example, for me, like the moment I step on the ice and I put my skates on, there's something that feels just peaceful.
It's like me perhaps going on my motorbike.
Exactly. And so how do we replicate that feeling in other spaces? Right? So how do we start to embody that to the point where it becomes more dominant than some of the adversity, if we want to use that language. And or how do we learn how to tap into that moment, into that memory in moments of like, oh man, I'm really stuck. We often talk about this. How do we crawl out of the rut that we're in? Can that be?
So it's interesting that in all of your description of this work that you're doing, I haven't heard you, or I raised I put across the word adversity. You talking about the positive. So think about the time that you're safe. So how close is that to appreciative inquiry or strength-based sort of practice? Because I was digging in and I was like, she's not saying anything adverse. I'm the one who's raising that, but you're tapping into like, tell me a moment that you felt safe as a child, or tell me what aspiration or what you want to do. So it's all good things. Is that?
I think because we unfortunately are living in a context in a society where we often think about like deficits and adversity, and in a therapeutic space, why not flip the script? Right? Why not embed ourselves in the joys, in the positivities? See
why I like hanging around with you at work, like in community too, because it's the joys that you're always looking out for, right?
And I think it's funny because, well, it's not funny, like it's this idea that that's what keeps us going.
True. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
that's
a good point. Yeah.
If you think about a future that is positive, then you kind of have to let go of the other stuff. But I also think it comes back to what I was saying like very early on, is that how do we become compassionate to the lived experiences of those that might have adversity? And so, okay, can I see beyond your adversity? And if I can do that for you, why not do it for myself? And that's where that comes from, right? Is if I'm a youth worker and I'm saying, you know what, yes, you've experienced XYZ and things are tough and school's not going well and maybe home life isn't great, but you want to do this one project, let's do that and let's focus on that. If I can do it with the young people I work with, I need to do it with myself.
Yeah. I mean, I so love this. And as I think about it, I think of my, friends and close, people that would benefit a lot from this positive sort of narrative that they can use to, approach life, right? I have friends sometimes that I hesitate to call because the minute I pick up the phone, oh my gosh, this is not working and this is not working, this is not working. But I really like how you're unpacking that. And so thinking about us living in a world where there's so many things that can go wrong. I mean, I always argue not argue, but say that we're in a polycrisis. Of course, I think we are in, right? So there's so many things going wrong there. And so you argue that people seek belonging through recreational and leisure pursuits, right? But then we also live in a world that treats recreation as a luxury.
Absolutely.
Now, how do you make the case that freely chosen activity is actually a fundamental, perhaps, human need?
Yeah. I think we take it back to the basics.
Okay.
And I think one of the things I hope to work towards is deinstitutionalizing recreation.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And so something like, when you get on your motorcycle, you don't need a system around you. It's just you and your bike
and the open
and
road.
The road.
Yeah.
And the more open it is, and probably the less structured it is,
yeah, absolutely.
The nicer it probably feels.
It does. Yeah.
And so how do we do that in our everyday lives? And so how do we start to reframe maybe how Western or Eurocentric opinions of what recreation is and go back to that concept of it? It's about, for me, recreation is deeply entangled. So maybe this is where it gets complex, is deeply entangled with spirituality.
Okay.
And in that, what I mean is that are we doing an activity that is a connection to self, other, or other than human?
Yeah.
And I draw on Sheridan's language for that. And so, and I think when we think about recreation in that lens, then we can start to think about things like recreation.
Yeah. Recreation.
Right?
Yeah.
And so how do we recreate our own narratives through these activities? Is going out for a walk enough?
Yeah.
But Euro-Western ideology, I think right now recreation is so entangled in sport.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And success.
And
progress towards something versus just enjoying the moment or being connected.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking of right now a mutual friend of ours who lives not so far from me, who would argue about this sort of neoliberalistic way that brings in, like, I think about recreation in the sense that, wow, man, it's been so commercialized and it's been so individualistic, and with that is, when we think of sport, it's like, okay, who's gonna be first? So I think of him, right? Okay, I sold myself out, but I think of him and then think of that, notion of neoliberalism and markets and, wow.
So, and even things like, you go out for a run.
Yeah.
We all have our smartwatches. We've all compared today's run to yesterday's run, and we're preparing for tomorrow's run versus what would happen if, and I'm guilty of this, what would happen if I took my watch off for a run and it doesn't go on Strava? That whole, the capitalism of these activities is, Hans Scott Meyer and I recently had a conversation, and he was talking about addictive systems.
Okay.
Right. And for me, that is like recreation has become an addictive system where I have to outperform the next.
Yeah. Oh, I have to get the best bike. Well, I'm not say bike.
Which bike? Motorbike or cycling bike?
I'm just saying.
Mine isn't the best. It's close.
It's close, right? Okay.
Our systems do not allow for the best financial system. No, but those are the entanglements that we deal with every day. But when we can stop and just say, it was really fun to go kick around a ball in the backyard.
Yeah.
That was my recreational time. Yeah. Cool. I got to hang out with a young person. I got to be outside in the sun. All of these things, those are the moments that I think allow the somatic or the, what I call the muscle twitches to actually really blossom and to do what they do. And when I think about muscles, I think about this idea that every muscle has its own brain, and and every muscle holds a story.
Yeah. Wow.
And so when we move them in particular ways, those stories exist in that way. But muscles are pretty resilient.
Yeah.
And you talk a lot about resilience.
Yeah, I do.
And this idea of, so then if we are using our muscles in resilient ways, can we not have these beautiful transitions in life that suppress all of this? Yeah. Let's be frank, pretty negative stuff that's going on in the world.
That's true. Beautifully said. And so my listeners, if you're listening and, what are you doing for yourself? Right? How are you showing up with, for recreational activities? Are you going for a walk? Are you going to kick around the ball in the park or something, right?
Yeah. Are you sitting down and writing?
Yeah. Oh, writing too, right?
Right? Like, is that your art?
Yeah.
Is that your activity? Yeah. I don't think we get to boundary what it is. Because again, then you're leaning towards the scripted is recreation, leisure, or sport.
So this is why I just paused, because I actually, I've been writing a lot. And after, when I put my pen down or my iPad down or my computer down, I'm like, wow, that felt good.
Yeah.
And then I have folks asking me, wow, you're writing a whole lot of things. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm actually enjoying it, not as work, but as recreation.
Yeah. And what's going on in your body when you do that?
Man, it feels good. Like, I have written lots because I actually find time to just calm down.
Yeah.
And really just feels like I'm unpacking a whole lot of things that are on my mind and I'm putting that on paper. And it's actually a really, really good feeling. Like, really, really good feeling. On Saturday, wow, it's twice now. Sorry, Coach JT. But I had to text my performance coach. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not coming for training. I'm actually just in this zone.
Yeah.
It felt so good that I didn't want to step out and go for my physical activity. For my functional adult athletic
and so
training.
Csikszentmihalyi would say you've entered flow, right? Flow state, right? And in that flow state, that is the essence of what recreation was.
Wow.
Before it was capitalized, right? Is how do we get into an activity to the point that we get lost in that activity?
Wow. Yeah, because
that's that freely chosen. Why do I get to say if it is or not?
Yeah. Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I think about my brother who, every morning for as long as I can remember, he writes morning pages. Now, morning pages was labeled by somebody, and I can't remember their name, so I apologize. Yeah. But you know, he writes every morning, and then sometimes he'll go to what he calls his shop and he'll do woodworking. Now, for me, that wouldn't be recreational at all, because that would be super stressful to sit there and turn wood and stuff. But for him, he gets lost in it and has no idea how long he's been at it. That's the same for probably someone like you that's writing in these moments. Or, you know, I think it's in some ways, what I think though is that it's all community oriented. And I think we shouldn't forget that, right? So you might write for yourself, but it potentially changes the way you're showing up for the next person. So if you're able to flow and get all of those thoughts out, you're probably more present when we're engaged in conversation. Or for example, like if I have gone for a run in the morning, I'm probably a little less feisty at work, right? Okay. Because I
so you should be running every day, by the way.
Yes, thank you. But because I was able to connect with the self, before I have to connect with another.
So perfect segue into the next question that I have. You know, your work is rooted in autoethnography and community arts-based methodologies. So what does it mean to turn the research lens on yourself, right? And how is your own story, your own body informed your scholarship?
One of the challenges I've been facing lately as I reflect on my autoethnographic work is that it's not about me, actually.
What?
It's about how I've interpreted familial spaces. Okay. Right? So a lot of my work is embedded in my experience playing ringette or traveling, or the stories I've heard from my families. None of that exists just solely in my body. So is it truly autoethnographic? And can we ever get to pure, true, like autoethnographic? Or is one of the things that accidentally happened, and I would have to go back and read my own work, is that I decided to put brackets around the self to make sense of something, which I think is really important. I think we need to bracket ourselves sometimes. But it's all embedded in the lived experiences I've had within my family unit. And my family unit extends out to my community, right? Because the foundation, or how I understand the world, is through my upbringing as a Shia Ismaili Muslim. And even the moments that I stepped away from that belief system, my parents were still deeply embedded in it. And that's still reflected in who I am. And that was the biggest learning from my research, actually, is that I couldn't escape the ethics that I was raised with. That felt good in my body, because there is cultural DNA. And in that it felt good. And so, I don't know that I answered your question, but, you did. This, I think it's more complex than we're letting it be.
Yeah, it is. But I like that you bring in the aspect of culture, because trust me, I was thinking about it too. And so you again write and speak about dismantling and recreating research that is recreating. I love that. Right? Recreating research that is accessible, culturally grounded, and transformative. And so when you think of modern day academic practices or approaches, what needs to be dismantled in our academia?
We talk about this a lot, don't we?
We do.
I think it's about how we understand what knowledge dissemination or knowledge production is. And I think about things like, is being in that space and just having the conversation enough? Right? Or do we actually have to take that next academic stance and write about it and produce it? But then there's a tension that I sit in, and that's probably why I don't write as much as I should. I should. But because then I'm extracting other people's lived experiences. Right? And I don't know who gave me that right. Yes, they signed consent forms, but I don't know. There's a tension there. And I think maybe that's why I leaned on autoethnography a little bit, is how I feel okay with extracting my own stories from a particular lens, knowing that it might not be the same story for my brother who grew up in the same home, or my parents' understanding, or all of those things. But in that sense, I can do that. I feel like art allows me to navigate that a little bit, because I don't have to interpret their art, or I don't have to analyze it. That's up to the community who sees that art. And that's why like showcases or those kind of pieces are really something I enjoy. I think it allows, and it also means that the interlocutors or the community members are able to sit with their art in community and have their own voice. And so I think that that's part of it.
That's so interesting, right? Because when you talk about autoethnography, that's the approach that I've taken in my own life and in my own writing, right? That so when I say that I'm actually enjoying writing, I'm writing about experiences that I've gone through, right? Because like you, I feel that what right do I have to write about other people's experiences? Like who has, of course, outside maybe consent forms, etc. It just doesn't sit well for me, right? And so when I think about my children's book series, again, it's something that we are living through. So it's, I remember the first book when I was, again, thinking about, is it fiction or is it a nonfiction, right? So you get into, you're trying to publish. I was like, no, this is not fiction. This is stuff that we're going through, right? And so the children's book, the Ubuntu I Am, because we had children's book series, is nonfiction. And I think of my memoir, gosh, again, leaning into my own experiences. And then the latest book that I'm working on, that you're going to be a part of, helping us launch in a couple of months. Heavy. Right. It's again, when you said like, how do I feel? Like I feel, warm and happy. I'm in a happy space. I'm flowing, I'm writing. But I think what's making me happy is that I'm thinking and believing of my own experiences. And all of those experiences are not, I'm not in a deficit modality. I'm thinking of, oh wow, this was an opportunity for this. This was an opportunity for this. And I'm here because of A, B, C, D. Right. And so I'm grateful that you mentioned that. And if there's a way that, in academia, we start having those conversations and those debates, that would be helpful.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we do have to remember, though, is that in autoethnography, you are creating opportunities for other stories to exist.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't. Yeah. And I think that was the one thing that my supervisor, Dr. Daniel Scott, always reminded me of, is like, why would this matter to the person that's going to pick it up? And can they find their own story within your story? And then can they not mimic necessarily, but use the approach that you use to make sense of your lived experience so that they can try and make sense of their own. Right?
Let's just pause a minute. Man, I wear my heart on my sleeve. And what you've just said there is what I've been trying to do.
Yeah.
Really, not to share my story or the children's book story as a way to put stuff out there, is to try and encourage other stories to come out. Now, you and I are sitting across from each other because of this podcast. Yeah. The idea is, how many stories can come out there? So, wow. Anyway.
Right. And then for me, that's where that collaborative poetry becomes powerful, because everyone's story is in one story. Yeah. So maybe you don't see yourself in lines 2 and 3, but you see yourself in lines 10 and 11, right? Or something like that. Yeah. And then the art is oftentimes fairly abstract. Yeah. Unless, like, I have had some incredible schooled, learned artists, and then also those of us that just throw paint around. Yeah. For lack of a better word. Yeah. Right? And so, but in there's an abstract, or there is a telling that doesn't have, it's not defined. And so you can find yourself in there. And so when I think about writing autoethnography now, I don't know that I did it during my PhD, is how do I leave those nuances open and available so that I'm not restricting? And I think that that's why in autoethnography, there's been a push against this step-by-step order of how it takes place. But Ellis, Boschner, and Adams would constantly tell us, be vulnerable. Yeah. Be vulnerable in that, because it's in that vulnerability that the nuance exists, that the humanity exists.
That's the scary thing about my next book. Because I'm like, my gosh, I'm being vulnerable here. Like, but in all of that, I'm like, okay, I'm hoping that this also opens a pathway for other stories to come to the fore.
Yeah.
Right. For other people to bring in. And anyway, so you talk about paint and art and all of these things. So here's a near last question. If your work were a piece of music, what would it sound like? What would it sound like? And what do you hope listeners would walk away feeling after hearing your voice on this podcast today?
That's like our buddy's question,
there
not for me. I I would hope that there's a warm tone to it with a subtle spark. And so what I mean by spark is like those awkward, off-key notes.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think why I think about that is it's because those are the moments of transition or transformation. And so the warmness is the joys and the feelings that come with knowing that you're moving forward and that there is good ahead of us, whether we can see it or feel it or not. Yeah. And then those are the moments of sparkness that help us get to where we go. And I think that there'll be moments of dullness too, where it's low, it's almost like drony. And those are hardships that we all experience. Yeah. I think it would be false for us to say that we don't experience moments of that.
Yeah. Wow. And what would you
I remember like when I was a young person, Evanescence. I don't know if you remember her music. Yeah, it was pretty dark. I was drawn to it, but I think I was drawn to it because it was mellow. It was it wasn't quite hopeful, but you could feel that there might be a sense of hope in that darkness. And so that's like kind of when you're like, I haven't thought about Evanescence in God knows how long, but today.
Okay, that's great. And I think of this power of recreating. What would you say to listeners to the pod? Like, how can they go about that journey of actually just recreating, right? Walking into this recreational space and then intentionally say, well, you know what, this is time for me to recreate.
I think don't overthink it.
Okay.
I think find that thing that makes you smile. And just go with it. And when it stops making you smile, find the next thing. And I think that is the key, is that it doesn't have to be consistent. So if today writing is working for you, go with it. Tomorrow, if it's not working, don't force it. Because then that joy disappears, right? It becomes work. It becomes work. And so
I can go for months without writing, and then when it comes,
it comes.
It comes.
And so I think don't overthink it. Have fun. Think about that thing that makes your child smile or you smile when you were a child, and go back to that.
I love it.
Start simple too.
I love it. Well, look, I don't let people go off before they answer 3 questions. Okay. And I think you know those questions. So if you were to have dinner with 3 people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
It's a cheap answer, but my dad would be at the table.
Yeah.
I think coming from the cultures that we come from, you know, there's so many stories that are untold. And so over dinner, it's a space where we can sit and share that. I would love to have had dinner with my paternal grandmother. There are so many stories about how I might be similar to her. And just to have that, I think would have been really lovely. So it's all family for me. And then I think if I could, it would actually be a random person. The third one would be a random person I don't know that someone suggests. And so it would be an open invitation. And I think for that, because of the curiosity of just not knowing who we don't know.
Wow. Yeah.
Those would be my
No one has ever given that answer before.
No one's allowed to give it again.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dr. G. Like, you're really, really amazing person. I love just how you talk about sort of healing and wellness, and you're such a community-minded person. And thank you for the gift that you are to the scholarly community, to broader community, and to all of us. So flowers to you for all the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. And thanks for doing this podcast.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Voices Listed podcast with Dr. P. Mac. I hope you enjoyed insights that came out of this conversation. Keep your notifications on. Our next episode will be dropping soon. Thank you and enjoy.